All right, welcome back to Web3 Whispers. Today we're doing the Artist Chat edition here. As always,
Yeah,
I'm with my co-host Steeb.
we're still working. We're still working on the title. We were thinking,
I'm mixing it
is
up
it
all the time.
Broad Strokes and Furious? Broad Stroke episode, artist spotlight. I don't know.
I feel like
We'll
there's a
land on
dirty
something.
joke in there somewhere.
Yeah,
It's like
Oh, Broad
yeah,
Strokes is close.
yeah. What is it? The garlic. What is that freaking phrase from? Have either of you guys watched The League?
No,
Oh
oh
no,
yeah. It's
I
like
think
I'm
it's
saving that
lemon.
one.
Vinegar Stroke.
Yeah,
I can't
vinegar.
remember.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that
like
Yeah.
that's
sour
it. I've
face.
heard that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So we're getting close there. But anyways, we have Jordan here. He's from the Ragnarok team, a character modeler over there, and we think that it's important to do an episode on the artists behind in the NFT space, the artists in these projects, because I think that a lot of times, and you guys may have heard us, cover similar things in past podcasts where we talk about how a lot of times people will look past the artists straight to the devs, the founders, etc. But I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of what we're looking at, a lot of what our NFT is art, and that's the first thing that we see, the first thing that draws us to a project. And so we do think it's important to interview the artists as well and get their thoughts and perspectives. And hopefully by the end of this podcast, you guys will have shifted your perception of the artist a little bit, and you can empathize with them a little bit more, and hopefully we bring a little bit more value to the artists too from this podcast. That's what we're hoping. These are lofty, quixotic goals, but I think if we can get even a little bit of the way there, then we're succeeding somewhere. So
Hopes and dreams.
exactly. So Jordan, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
So yeah, I'm Jordan. I'm Jordart on Twitter, and I've been, started working in the NFT space pretty recently. Probably at like the tail end of last year is when I first became involved with the project.
Awesome.
But before that, I was doing a lot of graphic work, just kind of hustling streetwear, and then doing some, album covers, posters for bands, video content, Instagram content. I have a band called Trickum that I
Awesome.
was pushing pretty hard last year with my cousin.
So you really could have gone music, NFTs, or artwork.
Well, we were
Either way.
looking into it, and Justin, my cousin, he's a pretty great dude, and we worked really hard in Trickum. He produces, like, he did like the first couple Eve's Tuber records. Talented guy, and he was like, you gotta get into like this crypto thing, because he's like, I can't figure it out. And so all last year it was just us like buying every top and selling the lows. But that's how you learn, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Exactly.
And
It's
then
funny. It's funny too that you say that, because I feel like a lot of the people that ended up in the space aren't like the person that found it in their like social circle. They're like the person that someone who found it in their social circle like mentioned it to, and then they're like they get interested and they get into it, and they're like, yeah, like the way I got into the space. Yeah, they're always
we're
like, yeah, the way
assigned.
I got in, yeah, exactly. The way I got into the space is like my buddy mentioned it to me. He couldn't figure it out, and he's like, you should try this thing out. And then like, what do you know? It like the person who was mentioned to is the person that's like most deeply involved.
Exactly. They're like, you do it, nerd.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
like you're the tech guy. You're in the van with the tech.
Yeah, exactly.
So then, so NFTs, it basically just was something I got into because I was, like I had mentioned, I was like in the cold. So I'm like trying to, like, is BitBoy, is this guy for real? Wolverine guy on YouTube. I knew right away the moon. I was like, this is not our guy. But like, so I wasn't completely clueless. But then I was like, I'm gonna go on Twitter, which I had abandoned a long time ago, and that's how I kind of got into CT. I was like, this is kind of fun, and then that was really what kind of brought me into it. And then my first project that I worked, it's kind of funny. The first project I worked on, like, you look back and you're like, you realize like how obviously not kosher the situation was. But
this is his preface to the rug.
Yeah. So I mean, the project itself isn't a rug, but I just don't think I ever I think I've been basically working with this guy, and we had been doing videos and stuff together for Trickum, and he's like, yo, I'm NFT project. And the first one he had been part of, I was like, but this one sounded pretty good, and it was Serial Club. And so he's like, yeah, just but this is great. And honestly, in retrospect, I really wouldn't have gotten involved with that. I don't really mind. But
I mean, I think that's a common story too. I feel like in this space, right? It's like you kind of have to have those non-kosher, like almost failure moments.
Learn,
Because I mean, not to get too philosophical here, but that's just like life itself, right? Like you kind of have to have those failures are kind of what shift you and bring you into a certain space. And Crypto God, you got to thank Crypto God for the successes that you have, but you learn from the failures. So we're glad you're here.
No, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Like it's cause so like I get in and I'm on the team. Like I've talked to the guys a couple times, but then I started realizing that I was kind of like almost like Fiverr, but not even Fiverr for this guy. like I was on the Discord and I'm all like, yo, I'm so popular in the Discord right now. And then but then he started hitting me up and he'd be like, hey, how we doing on the Discord? And then I was like, oh, I'm doing the Discord for him.
You just realized slowly that you had become the mod.
Yeah, you're like, I'm a moderator as well. Like,
yeah. It was just, I think it was just kind of also that, they were all, really good at hustling and laying things down. But it, again, you got to get in and work to see what kind of projects do you want to be a part of and what kind of projects are going to really speak to you.
Right.
And like with Serial Club, all those guys were actually like super fun and nice as people. But like I remember I was doing, drawings and art and just kind of submitting that for like the Twitter or whatnot. And I just kept running into issues like I would try to do like some specials. Like I had done one that was like almost like a nuclear reactor because they have that open top. And I was like, this is a no-brainer. But like you send it to those guys and they're like, no, like we want a cop. We want a fireman. They're like, well, how about a denim jacket with a shearling collar? Like we just weren't on the same page,
Yeah.
And so I departed before they launched or whatever. So, but I wish them well. I think they are really serious about what they're doing. Although I stay in the Discord just to keep an eye on it. And it's just funny because I think they're coming out with some kind of like Chris Brown cereal. I don't know. I'm not
it's hard for me to wrap my mind around exactly what this project is doing. Just
it was like Breezy's Crunch or something, and I was like, man, I'm glad I didn't buy these.
Yeah, I'm glad I've only have 50 or 60 of these things. Oof, that would have been bad if I minted a ton.
Exactly. But so then I basically just got involved with the WASIs, and I would say for younger or newer artists to get involved with the WASI community is I would highly recommend it. It's very supportive. There's tons of artists. They're always posting content. And there are other projects, like the Tubbies have Tubby Tuesday. But there's something about WASI Wednesday, and I think it's the fact that they do have that prize where they're actually doling out one of these WASIs every week. That really, you get some skin in the game, and it enables people who I think WASIs are a little low right now, but even still, that's not something a lot of people, especially an artist, can afford right off the bat.
Yeah,
and it kind of gives them an opportunity to get in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think there's a lot of cultural pull with the WASIs and stuff like that too. It's like a very crypto native creature. You know what I mean? It's not like it's like, oh, it's a bear or a bull or like a giraffe. It's like kind of made up, right? Like it's like kind of a mix like between like I don't even actually know, like some like little platypus or something, like a standing. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell. Like
like a platypus, penguin, but there's kind of something salamandery.
Yeah, but it's hilarious, and it's like you don't
looking.
find that on anything. Yeah, you don't find that anywhere else, right? It's not like this is like a a club. There's like a soccer club named the WASI Club or something like that. Like it's like only for crypto Twitter.
Exactly, and then the whole story, because like there was the original artist who I'm spacing at right now, but then I know Maru, I think, was then with the guy who came up with like the legend behind it. And the cool thing about that whole space too is they're doing a lot of cool stuff with like Creative Commons licenses and just letting people generate WASI stuff, explore derivatives, and they're not hammering them with cease and desists. I gotta tell you, there are sometimes, even very recently, sometimes projects come out and you definitely see it, especially when it's like on a different chain, that are like, I don't even know if calling it a derivative is fair. It's really just a straight
copy
rip.
and paste.
It's a straight rip.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, like,
like
I don't wanna name them. I don't, I don't wanna ruin anyone's bags, but I would just say watch out for that and be careful because a lot of the derivatives projects. I think some of the WASI's ones, or if you have a built-in support system and everyone is in love with these types of characters, that can work.
Yeah.
But it people like to pretend the art doesn't matter, but it really does.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a really important point too. I mean, I think even Matthias and I had a little Twitter conversation about it. Like when I was first talking to you, actually, it was kind of the inspiration for the tweet. But I was just thinking, like, after Azuki's came out, there was a lot of projects that kind of started doing similar. I think the anime NFT space blew up after Azuki. And so there were a lot of projects that I would say were derivatives, but there are also some projects that were like almost copy and paste. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
it
And
kind of
then
got
there's
me.
like Baby Azuki.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And then it kind of got me thinking too, like I was like, well, like, maybe mimicry does bring value to the original project. Like, that saying that everyone always says, like, mimicry is the sincerest form of flattery. I think like there's a certain for the original project, I think if the project that's mimicking, does all right, it kind of brings value back to the original. And it kind of acts as like an access point for some people that maybe couldn't get into the original. But I think from an artist standpoint, and even from my standpoint, like that can be I think that's just a little bit too lackadaisical, like almost just like a lazy thing.
Yeah, I know, I completely agree. And then I think also part of what's happening is things that are purely deflationary or have a such a finite supply. Because I'm not gonna get all like Michael Saylor, but even like gold, like it's super limited. But like you can always dig up more gold, and NFT projects are so limited
Mm-hmm.
that you can't really expand too much. And I think that
hmm
kind of limits them in a way. So derivatives, I think, are a sign that a project is healthy and people want to get involved. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about the NFT project itself, the originator figuring out a way to scale, to say, okay, there's only ever going to be, Tubby's was a larger collection, 20,000 of these,
Mm-hmm.
or but there's some smaller ones, like I think Krypton Goons is like 7.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, we have to have enough so that people can get in the game if they're not able to spend thousands of dollars on this
Right.
and feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they're part of it. And if we don't, someone's going to pop up a derivative
Right.
or a
hmm
project that's a knock, and people are going to get into that. And so it's funny and it's difficult because so much of NFTs is about access. It's
Mm-hmm.
about being part of the smaller club. But I'm this is something I was reading on Twitter just today, but I forgot to mention it. But it's like, you have the Bored Apes, and then you have the Mutants, but then you have the Kennel Club, and the Kennel Club, they're like, if you're a Bored Ape, you're like, yeah, you're in the Kennel Club, dude. Like if you don't have the Bored Ape, you
yeah.
don't even really have utility. Although that's the most like overused word.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
agree.
I think it's really like the intent of the mimicking project or the derivative project because I've
Mm-hmm.
seen ones that do a really good job because their intent is like they want to build a community. The art really resonated with them. They loved it. Like they want to take the ethos and kind of run with it. And then you have ones that are just like, oh, okay, the Asian theme or whatever, Azuki is popular. We'll make, right facing Azukis and people will buy it. We will just rug and we're good. Like, they're just like, oh, this, there's product market fit and that's all they're looking for.
Yeah,
But I
one
think it's really the
one
intent.
yeah, I agree. And like one side to that, like your example of like just taking Azuki and flipping it to the right side, like that's opportunistic, right? Whereas like I feel like the derivatives, if they have the right intent, if they address that's their intent, if they address that, they're just kind of running with the ethos and trying to create something that, is also art, it's not copy and paste, it's not opportunistic necessarily, but it still brings some value to the people that want to get into it and maybe at a lower point, then I think that's where things are a little bit healthier and a lot less toxic. You probably won't see, I'd say 99% of the copy and paste projects, or maybe a little bit less, are rugs, but the derivative projects, if they come in with the right intent, the right ethos, and they address that's why they're getting into the space, then I think those ones are the ones that you can have a little bit more confidence getting into.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's almost so easy to tell. I feel like when you're looking, especially like that is a rug, like
Yeah.
it's got
Yeah.
like they have the look, man.
They
Like
feel like a
does that
rug. They
look
look
like
like
it
a
was
rug.
made?
Yeah. And then it's
Yeah,
probably a rug. Yeah, exactly.
they look it looks like art from like some ad for an insurance company on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like
You're
this
like,
is
that's the Geico
obviously
gecko right there. Like, I'm telling you right now.
exactly. It's just not cool.
Yeah.
And
I
I
mean, I
think
think the
that
problem
Mhm.
too is that people just aren't willing to put in the work to like, one, they get FOMO and then, everything is like now, now, now. And then on the other hand, they're just not willing to put into the work to kind of feel out the community, feel out the team before they get in. You know what I mean? So I think
yeah,
that kind of plays against people with rugs.
Yeah, and the
for
momentum
sure.
trading for
Yeah,
sure. Like,
exactly.
it's just like people like, oh, okay, Azukis are good. The second place Azuki should, whatever right facing Azuki should do a little bit. If I'm early, then we're fine.
Yeah,
But it's just not a good idea. Like, I
exactly.
mean, I could see it as like a side chain, kind of like a canary chain for like, Polkadot or something like that, where you could
Hmm.
have a derivative that gets a little bit more open to like artistic interpretation or like goes against kind of brand, but it's the same,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
punk Azukis or something, like
Yeah,
something completely different. But I feel like the team has to be not antagonistic to it as well. Like it has to be the right environment.
100%.
um you can't make like something like really bad. If you made something really like, I don't know, super dicey or controversial and branded it like Azukis or punks or whatever, it would
Hmm.
not look good on the punks or the Azuki. It just like you couldn't do anything about it, but it would just look
Yeah, I
bad.
Oh
agree.
yeah, for sure. You could definitely use it to kind of, I don't know,
We're into psyops, like
maliciously. You
guerrilla
could have a
warfare with
malicious
NFTs.
derivative.
Malicious
100%.
derivatives. Yeah,
I like
can we? I
that.
mean, it sounds like you could, but I don't
Just
know.
coining words over
It
here.
does seem like it.
That's like
The
a
Um,
that's a
new,
good post-punk band. Like I would see them.
yeah,
malicious
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 derivative.
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 That is yeah, I would
I
listen just
know,
off
it's like,
purely based off the name.
well,
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna even say. Like, I mean, NFTs and stuff like this are so they feel like the new punk. Like they're so counterculture. They're so like
Hmm.
against the main
And
grain. Like
people really
people
hate them.
hate it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like the kind of hate you get for it. This is very similar to like piercings, and if you really were like into punk and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's
And
true. And I feel like that's a product of the stage of life NFTs are into. I mean, that happens with almost anything that blows up, right? I mean, like even if you were to look
Mhm.
back to like rock or like any really like any like thing that is mainstream now, I think at one point was kind of looked down upon by the outside world, and then it kind of just blows up and people get, there's a giant overhaul.
oh,
Yeah,
for
for
sure,
sure.
for sure. And I think the market's maturing.
Um,
Like there was some article I just read about, the guy. There was a dude at one point who spent like almost $3 million on it, like a picture of the Jack tweet. Because at that
Mhm.
time, people didn't understand really what NFTs are. Like at that
right.
point,
Yeah.
right click save was a valid criticism. And now
Yeah.
but now people kind of understand it's more about a community. It's about access. And if you have access to this, then you can have
Hmm.
access to that. You can do this, and this could be a proof of purchase for that, etc. But what I think now we get stuck up in is you have people who have a lot of hustle. And let's say you have people like I am not a dev. I
Hmm.
I don't know how to code.
Hmm.
So let's say I did we all need each other. So you have these people who have a great idea, or like they have a great idea for a token or a contract or for a utility. And then they're like, well, what do I attach it to? And I think the problem that a lot of these people are running to now is they're really underthinking the art, but also overthinking it. And
Yep.
what just to expand on that so it's not nonsense, it's
Hmm.
just anime, for instance, and Ozukis
Hmm.
and in manga or whatever. So you've always had that a manga and anime. They
Hmm.
predate NFTs and they're bigger than NFTs and they always will be. That's like a genre of art. So
Mhm.
if Azukis are popular, if you can find something innovative to do with manga or anime, that's not a derivative. Derivative, you're operating in that world. Just like you might have Jim Jarmusch doing a noir movie,
Hmm.
and then you
Mhm.
have uh, the Cohen brothers doing a noir. It's
Hmm.
it's it's a kind of a play space where you can just kind of you can play around with all these different definitions and icons
Hmm.
and create something in that land. And I think that if NFT projects start thinking about it more that way,
Mm-hmm.
and because yeah, you do kind of want to be on point, and you do want to follow the trends, because there's things that are cool and things that are not cool. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to be in a grunge band right now,
You don't
if
want
you're
to be in
not
a
going to
grunge
get
band. I got
anywhere.
something to say.
Yeah, but if you, at this point, if you're 200 gex, that's even more useless. It's almost
Yeah.
better to be in a grunge band. So
Yeah.
you want to be part of what's going on, but I think it's just important to think broader, and to not be afraid to use a little creativity. And if
Mm-hmm.
you don't have it, to admit it, and then just find the person that does and team up.
Yeah, for
Yeah, I
sure. I
agree.
mean,
I
I think
agree.
that's something that if you study art and art history, that people will see a lot. Like every art cycle is basically a reactionary effort or movement against the previous cycle. You know, the
Oh
previous
yeah,
cycle was Renaissance, then it goes like crazy, and then it goes like conservative, then it's crazy. Like, it goes, it just kind of is a
It's like the
rebellion against
pendulum
the
swinging,
previous.
swinging. Yeah. No.
Exactly, but nobody wants to be that first person to go, against the whole grain, but that's the whole point of artists, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Exactly.
so
So
yeah.
Jordan, I mean, I probably should have asked you this question at the beginning,
no problem.
before we get too tangential. I just want to bring us back
Yeah.
for a sec. So yeah, so Jordan is a part of the Ragnarok team. Jordan, can you speak a little bit on? Yeah, this probably should have been at the beginning. My bad on
No, it's
that.
fine.
No worries.
You
um,
know, maybe you can cut and paste it. We can do a segue.
yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Jordan's part of the Ragnarok team. Anyone that's in the NFT space, I think, is probably familiar with Ragnarok. Matthias and I we did our, I think, second episode on Ragnarok, and we were both pretty excited on it, and we're glad that it's gotten the traction that it has now. If you could just speak a little bit about what Ragnarok is and how you got involved, that'd be great.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I'm a newcomer to Ragnarok. I've been in it for about just shy of a month. Fan hit me up on, he had seen some of my art, and he liked it, and he was like, "Do you think you could do this?" And I did a tryout, and he was like, "Yeah, I think you could do this." And so I'm so happy to be on the team. Uh, and I had known about Ragnarok beforehand. I had been following it, and I had a feeling that it was going to do well. But at that point too, some of those projects that are doing so well, you're like, I don't know, I'm never gonna get in the whitelist for that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you're watching it, but you're kind of like sour grapesy. Like, maybe you're not even like knowing as much about it as you could. So I really started learning a lot about it as I'm part of it, and super exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a metaverse RPG,
Mm-hmm.
but it is also a profile pick. Now, so the profile picks that are done by Sasha Kim, who's like fantastic artist.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they're the first step. And then what I'm doing as a character modeler is, we have a playable demo of the RPG, Ragnarok.xyz,
Mm-hmm.
best played on desktop. But so we have a playable demo already. Uh, but
Wow,
my
which is
job as
huge
character,
comparative, like, to
that's what I'm
a
Yeah.
lot
saying.
of
Yeah.
projects. Like, they're like pre-revenue, pre-project, pre-art, pre-everything. They're like 1 billion, like it's
It's
gonna
a
be sold out.
Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I really, and that's when I knew right away that Fan was different, and he is. He's just like a different
Mhm.
level of guy, and I'm really pumped about the team. But they had something workable, and there's a team, and they're in action, accomplishing the goals, and coordinating. I'm coordinating with one of the people that I'm working with is another great artist, who is on Twitter. He's Gucci Toxins,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
he's done some of the graphic work on the website itself, and you've seen his work on the Twitter, but also just helping me out with some of the outfits, because again, what my job is as character modeler is, you're going to have this profile pic, and then that reveal is going to happen soon, and then when you get your reveal, you're going to be able to play that character in the game,
Mm-hmm.
and
Wow.
you're also going to be a Ronin Zero. And this, I think, points towards what we had talked a little bit earlier about with scaling solutions, is there's only going to be 7,777 Ronin Zero,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to be able to play your character in this game. And then you're going to be able to, with two Ragnarok, you can breed
Make a
and
baby.
make a baby.
Mm.
And so I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like yet. Um, but we're going to be able to have new Ragnaroks coming in. So as the as the metaverse expands within the RPG, because it's it's like a 3D world that you can kind
Hmm.
of travel around in. It's going to be cool because we are going to be able to bring some new people in it. And then they just have a lot planned. I mean, they're dropping. If you check out the roadmap, they're dropping like a manga chapter, really just going over the lore. And then there's going to be, eventually at some point, in addition to just the game really launching with more quests, uh, but they have. Uh, Sorry, I'm drawing a blank here.
No, you're
No,
good.
you're
You're
good.
good.
You probably can't leak too
That
much
and
anyway,
I
so
do
it's
want to
good.
speak on that roadmap a little bit too, because I remember talking to Mathias about this. Like when you hop on the Ragnarok website, the roadmap is like,
Yeah, everything I'm saying is straight from the roadmap, so
yeah,
I don't want to repeat the whole thing, but
no,
I'm
you're
just
good.
chilling because I love it.
No, but what I was gonna say is like that roadmap on the website is so cool because you can like pick your character and then you kind of walk down that path, and each of like the different corners that you hit on that path is like a different part of the roadmap. It's like the interactive roadmap. It was really cool. I liked it a lot, and I think it
Yeah.
gave us some insight into what the characters would look like too, right?
Oh, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure,
No,
and
I thought that was really cool. And you know what? Like, it's kind of cool too. I feel like a cool opportunity for as an artist because with these projects that have a limited supply, they're not scaling up or anything like that. Then it's kind of like, okay, like what's the next thing I have to do? But like with a play to earn game where there's going to be like multi-generational Ronin zeros, or you know what I mean? Like you have to have 2 Ronin zeros and then you can breed. Like that gives you
yeah,
another opportunity, like
and there'll be a
more work.
rental option, I believe, for those who only have one. You'll be able
Oh,
to
nice.
rent a Ronin to
Oh,
breed,
cool. Rent
which is
that kind of sounds like eerily like prostitution to me, but
I don't want to get into the
yeah.
humanitarian aspects of it, but we're early in the metaverse.
No, like
Uh,
Nothing's illegal in the
yeah.
metaverse. Is that
Yeah. Are there any Ronin Zero police officers? No, but
what-
it is a really cool opportunity, I feel like, as an artist, because you get to continue to work on the project, right? Rather than like, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next job that I have? Like for you,
yeah,
I
like
bet
when
it's
things are just done after the profile pic, it kind of feels boring, right?
yeah, exactly. So that's cool. It's a cool opportunity for you. Can you describe a little bit to us, like how would you describe the Ragnarok PFPs, and then how would you describe the Ragnarok in-game characters from an art perspective?
From an art perspective, so the PFPs, they have a great like manga sensibility to them.
Hmm.
And but I feel like it's more vivacious and energetic than
Hmm.
Azuki, like Azuki of the profile, and there's like a stillness to it. There's something
Hmm.
cool about Azuki, right?
Yeah.
I think Ragnarok, and one of the reasons that I think the profile pics are so genius is because you can tell that they're all ready for action. This is an action oriented project. You're going to play all these characters.
Like
So
there's a
if they have a
tenseness.
weapon,
Yeah.
they have a weapon. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And I think there's kind of more of a youthful, current hipness also
Hmm.
to the characters and their design and their traits. I think it's more 2022
Hmm.
at the very least. And so I think what makes Ragnarok different visually in those profile pics is just there's a sense of energy and something's about to happen. Get
Yeah.
ready. You can tell something is imminent with Ragnarok.
Right. Like that sword's about to get unsheathed.
Yeah, like well,
Yeah.
what's the old Shakespeare like the in media res or whatever? Like you're in the middle of it right now.
Yeah.
You're looking at this person and they're in the middle of something, and they just turn to the camera and you took a shot of them.
No,
They're
and
not like yeah,
that's an important juxtaposition too. I feel like because with the Azukis, like I agree, like they do look really cool. Like they have this stillness to them. Like there's a peace almost. Like it just has this like it has this injection of like just like a calm like lack of motion, just chilling. Like it's like almost like the after the fight. You know what I mean? Like kind of just walking home kind of sense. Whereas like the Ragnarok PFPs, I think, have a lot more a sense of like this potential energy, like something's about to happen, like you said, and like that, or they're even like it feels like they're in motion, like they're like it's like the calm before the storm, or like even that in between. I feel like the
yes.
Ragnarok has, and it's very it's pretty apparent in the art too. And you know what? Like yesterday we talked to, or 2 days ago, we talked to the Vivid team, and they're using Akibright as their artist, and like that, I think that art's really cool too. I mean, so
Mm-hmm.
we have talked a little bit about art on the podcast, but this is the first time with an artist. So I think it's important that you're giving, you know, you're giving the PFP juxtaposition between the Azukis and Ragnarok, because it kind of gives us like an artist lens into what a PFP means and what, you know,
Yeah, and
the
that's one thing
themes.
they did. And again, I'm new to Ragnarok,
Hmm.
so there was some work done on those. The demo was playable before I joined,
Hmm.
and so Sasha also worked on the sprites, which is like that the sprite you can actually see them a little bit in the demo every now and then. They're like
Hmm.
the black and white characters that look like sketches,
Hmm.
and
Do
so
you
that's what
work
all.
pretty closely with Sasha Kim too? Like, do you like, does your
Not
team and Sasha Kim's
She's
have a
been
lot of?
so busy with the profile pics.
Hmm.
I've barely been able to talk with her. I work a
Hmm.
lot with Gucci, and I work with Fan. Fan is the guy who's just always on top of things.
Hell yeah. And that's
Very
cool
much.
too that you get the hands on with the founder, because you know, I feel like when a team gets big enough, I think the founder kind of like relays everything to one or two members, and then it kind of trickle down communication rather than like one on ones.
Well, yeah, and I think we'll all be working together more too as we enter into different phases. Because obviously,
Hmm.
with the PFPs, you want them to be beautiful, so that's a high priority. So I had never been involved in that, so I'm not part of that process.
Hmm.
But I'm sure we'll all be tossing our 2 cents in as we're building these characters and putting them in the game. But that's kind of one of the really fun things about it as an artist and being
Hmm.
part of a team is there's such a thing these days of like I'm an artist and everything's gonna come from me and it's my world, and it's like, yeah, like that's so small. Like it's so fun to be part of a team where like Fan and Sasha, and they've come up with this idea, and we have the RPG, and we have the PFPs, and we have these energetic PFPs, and I really love the fact with them that these aren't characters. They don't look like dossier shots. Like
Hmm.
that's a picture of this character. Like there's a character that's holding a stop sign, and you can tell that they've already used that stop sign on
It's
somebody.
bent, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that there's something tough about that. I think it's cool. And then she also worked a little bit in the sprites, and I think it's also a testament to a lot of her creativity. Sasha's is that the sprites have more of an RPG look versus the
Hmm.
more realistic manga look of the PFP. And so then we're translating all those traits so everyone can tell, yes, my character is my PFP, but now they've kind of been given life. They've manifested into this metaverse world. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like you're going from that 2D into the 3D, and I think it's pretty brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's just been fun, just kind of working. When you're working with other artists and working with other lines, you're going to learn a lot. So I would just encourage artists who are trying to get in, don't hold on too tight to this has to be my thing. And because if we're thinking about it, art is communication. You're trying to communicate, right? And if you're not communicating, what's the point of it? Just sit at home. Like if you want to put it out there, you want to put it out there because you want people to interact with you. And
Hmm.
so, just I think a little humility, and just a little just be excited about art in general, not just about your art, and your art will improve and you'll find more opportunities. And I think the best opportunities coming up in the NFT space are going to be on these teams for
Hmm.
projects that are legit, that are really doing things. And like you said, they're not just minting and then in a month we'll tell you what we'll do.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because
No, that is important.
I really think that that's one of the problems is even the projects that aren't rugging, a lot of them just haven't even started or
They
even
don't
reveal
move.
what they're
Yeah.
going to do. And it's just, again, that's where you're running to that scaling solution. If you only have 10,000 of them and you haven't even told anyone what you're going to do with it for a month, and then once you tell them, now it's going to be another whatever 6 7 months, you're going to start losing interest, and there's not enough people invested to really get the word out.
Right. And I think scalability too kind of brings value back to the Genesis pieces. Like in,
Hmm.
I mean, if you know, I think a lot of times when there's a Genesis piece and then, there's like a subclass piece or like a next generation, like with what you guys are doing at Ragnarok, like I think that it kind of creates this in game or like in project hierarchy And because there are pieces that, were first that have a perceived higher value, I feel like the second that there's a second generation, there's more value being brought to the Genesis pieces, because people
Definitely.
are like, that's the top of the pyramid, that's what I want. And so I don't think that scalability needs to be a bad thing. I feel like a lot of people get caught up in like the deflationary, like we need to set like a limit, we need to limit the supply, because a limited supply means, with higher demand means that they're going to be more valuable. But I think that you can scale out an NFT project without losing value on the Genesis pieces.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and I've seen that, one example, and this isn't like my number one when it comes to, although it's fun, I'm not hating, but like the Cosmo Dinos, which is they're like a French team, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and they came out with their like the gods, and then they came out with the alpha, which was, and then so the gods, I guess, is the Genesis, very small, and then they had the alpha collection, and then they
Mm-hmm.
had the omega, and so you're building excitement for the next one amongst the ones who have the Genesis.
Right.
Another project that's done that recently is Shines. Anyone who bought those Shines Genesis, when they put the companions up for public mint, before everyone minted it publicly, everyone who had a Shine that wasn't listed was able to go and pick up their companion for whatever the cost of gas was. It was like
Mm-hmm.
whatever, $10 for 6 for me.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome.
yeah, and I think that's how you do it. And I think if you're doing it that way, you always will have extra value in that Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can start building out pretty easily. And
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
honestly, building out's essential, because where do you want to give up with this? I think if you have a big view, like with the Watsies, I'm always like, why isn't this Bugs Bunny? Like, why can't this be that big?
Mm-hmm.
Like I would love there to be like someday like a custom Ragnarok Nike on sneakers.
Yeah,
Like
that'd be
that would be
sick.
sick.
Yeah,
And
some Air
but
Force Ones with the Ragnarok like on the logo, that'd be tight.
yeah, or even just like a completely original design. And and
Yeah.
and I just feel like the way that's going to happen is just through word of mouth and more people knowing what it is, and more people feeling like they're a part of it.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So what are some, now that we've talked about Ragnarok a little bit, we can start focusing more on like the artist. So what are some issues as an artist that you see in the NFT space, and what are some ways that you think that Web3 will impact the art space for, both the artist and the user?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I feel like a lot of the issues come down to glut and really a lack of curation.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some marketplaces that do a better job than others. Like I know on Solana, there's a couple marketplaces that are like you have to get approved to be on their marketplace. But
Mm-hmm.
OpenSea, it's like holy cow, anyone can just drop anything on
Yeah.
there. And I think what ends up happening is you're just scrolling, or if you're just looking at the upcoming NFT projects, uh, you're just looking down this list, and there's just so many clear losers where the art was not thought out. And I remember there was one project that I ended up not being part of, never came to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
But so I was talking to this one individual who was kind of like a really good marketer, and then the other one was a coder who had this idea for a token, or at least had the ability to make one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember we were talking about what we were going to do and how we were going to incorporate that with an NFT. And I was saying we should do like one of those, a token where you can earn from like walking, like
Mm-hmm.
like you track your miles. And they're like, no, that's a stupid idea.
Income step in.
I know. Although I think I would have been late anyway.
Yeah.
Like we would have been like just fresh on the heels.
It's funny. I
But
feel like when you have these ideas, like someone's already thought it. Like I always feel like whenever I have an idea, like, oh, this would be really cool. Like
definitely,
someone has already thought about it. They just haven't put it out yet. And so like a lot of time, like by the time you're ready to put something out, like someone's already put out that idea, and like
it
you were just a little bit
happens.
late to the game. Yeah.
It happens, and I think, it happens in all avenues. Like
Mm-hmm.
there would always be like my uncle, one of my uncles is a cameraman, and I remember always just kind of going through and reading all the ads for the one ads, and there would always be like 3 Peter Pan projects in the same year. Like all
Mm-hmm.
the different studios, they would magically just kind of gravitate towards the same types of projects at the same times. And maybe that's because of, whatever they're all surrounded with. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah, no,
So
no, no. It's true. And it's funny too. I feel like that's a wild driver in the NFT space, is like a race almost to see who can do something first. Like, we've even noticed on Shogun War too. Like, I feel like some other projects kind of try to beat us to the starting line. And like, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think competition drives a lot of value to both projects. It's just like you can tell like when something is rushed. You know what I
Oh
mean? Like,
yeah.
I think some projects just feel rushed, and I think it's because they see that someone else is kind of in the same space as them. Like, even if it's not 100%, even if it's just tangentially in the same space, then like, okay, we got to beat them. I feel like, rushing something is never the best for quality, and sometimes it kind of becomes apparent on the project as well.
Yeah, and I understand how it happens too, because mainly, there are some websites, but mainly I feel like a lot of people learn about an upcoming NFT through Twitter. And so you go on Twitter, and so let's say you're trying to push your NFT. Well, you're not going to be able to push your NFT without showing them an example of a profile pic or what the NFT is. But the second you post that, anyone could come in and just say, if they're mobilized and they already have a team, they can basically take your design and churn it out faster than you can.
Yeah,
I mean
exactly.
that's been happening with fashion.
Yeah.
Zara, I think there's a whole documentary on that, about how these, this one brother sister design team in Paris, they came out with a shirt, they showed it on runways in Spain. Before they actually had their shirt in stores, Zara had the knockoff in their stores.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
So
What's the name of
so
that
I
documentary? I kind of
understand
want to
why
give it a
people get
watch.
caught up in it, but
Yeah.
the importance of having preparation before you start promo.
No, I
Prepare
agree. Definitely.
first,
Yeah,
because
no, and
once
it's
you start the promo, you're in that race.
yeah, no, and I mean, I think that speaks to Ragnarok too, right? Like you were saying, you guys already had so much in development before like the mint even happened, and I think that you can kind of see that when a project mints.
Oh, for sure. Like I feel like I'm probably one of the latter people added to the team. I mean, they've been at this for months.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so, but it's definitely, it's really important to show at this point, I think, that you're doing it. I think for a while it was enough to say we're going to do this. And similar to Kickstarter, like when Kickstarter first launched, people were like, I'm gonna make a board game. And everyone's like, yeah, you are. And they're all throwing in their $50. And I think in the beginning, because it was smaller, the people who said I'm gonna make a board game, they did. And then
Yeah.
everyone started believing in it, but then everyone just realized, oh, I could just take all this money. And so then that started happening. And so now if you're gonna show your project on a Kickstarter, you're gonna need to show some more work, because
Right.
it's gotten to that point where people can take advantage of it. And so
Yeah,
you got to really get out there.
You want to make sure that you're putting your money towards something that, has already had some progress, because I mean, it gives people a little bit more faith. I feel like that's intuitive too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And I think too, it's tough to assemble a really good team. It's hard. I think the key thing too with the NFT space and people looking to do a project are like, don't underestimate what this is, because like this failed token I had talked about, when they were trying to work out the NFT for it, I had come up with several ideas, and then at one point they were just talking. They were like, the art really doesn't matter. I mean, they're putting stick figures out there, and I don't know if they were like referencing like the MFers or whatever, but the MFers, first of all, are not just stick figures. They have a vibe. They have a vibe that's rebellious, but also chill and approachable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's
Like,
funny too, because I feel like the space itself is already has a lot of anarchy injected into it, and I feel like these projects that go like a level further and they just release something that's like simple and kind of like, it feels counterintuitive, it feels kind of insulting. I feel like it's not always out of like being lackadaisical or like just trying to like do something that's easy. I feel like sometimes it's almost like a statement. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to
oh, for sure.
it's like almost counterculture to the counterculture.
Yeah, I mean, Miladies are a perfect example of that, where you have a profile pic collection. Now
Miladies
they
are
look,
so based. It's so
Yeah.
funny.
yeah, they're
Like,
so tough. They're so
yeah.
tough. And from a standpoint, looking at the profile pictures personally, a
Hmm.
lot of them look very similar to me. But like it's tough to tell the difference between some of the traits unless you have like
Yeah.
a real like the strawberry head or whatever. But versus like with Ragnarok, they're working so hard at making sure that every single one of these characters is distinct and like that every
Yeah.
floor piece is perfect. But at the same time, the Miladies were able to capitalize on being able to see their profile picture and fitting an energy to it that matched.
Hmm.
So like while I was saying like the MFers, they're badass, they're tough, but they're also laid back. They're probably stoned. They're approachable. You can hang out with them. They're like Matthew McConaughey, Days of Confused vibes to me. But the
Yeah.
Miladies, they were like, this is toxic. The best thing to do with Miladies is to create like toxic,
Chaos. Yeah.
yeah, histrionic,
Yeah.
borderline personality disorder. We're gonna go nuts.
Such a
These
vibe.
Little
exactly.
schizo. I love that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's
Yeah.
what I think is interesting about so like the MFers and stuff like that. Like I remember art like that kind of coming up, growing up, like E-Bombs World and different like, games online that were like just weird, kind of like weird games, but you would play them because they're kind of funny. Like I don't know if you guys remember those like stickmen that would like fight other stickmen and like it was just like this on like
Oh
long
yeah.
video. Yeah, like it's like that generation, but from the outside looking in, it looks like people are just like, what is that even? That's a stick figure. Like they don't get it. And I think the Milady thing is like a very, very punk rock as well. It's like if you're looking at somebody that has like a shaved head and a neon green mohawk, like it's not for you to like. It's like it's so you don't like it on purpose. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like you're not a part of this. Like the Miladies took like toxicity and they're just like, we're gonna get weird and like you can't be canceled here. Like you can say whatever psychotic shit you want, and you will just the Miladies are just weird. Like they're just like
Exactly.
I'm
It's
down
primal
for it.
scream therapy. It's like this is a safe
Exactly.
space to be unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's like their vibe is like you can just be crazy. Like it's like sounds good.
For sure.
Love
And
that.
and I think that's important too, is like know what you're delivering. Because there's a
Hmm.
lot of cool projects. Like I really like the Museum of Modern Borpa, all the
Oh
stuff
yeah, I
that
really
they've
like those
dropped.
too. Those are so
Because
their videos are so good.
right? That's what I'm saying. That
They're genius.
I feel like they need to get those videos out better and more. Like I think one of the main issues was like they were on YouTube, which is cool, but very few people I feel like click a YouTube link off of Twitter. They don't want to get off of Twitter. You got to get
Yeah.
those videos on Twitter so people could just watch it right there. They don't want to go to that second location with you, especially
Yeah,
if
for
you're like an
sure.
NFT project, you know?
Mm. Well, I
Hmm.
But
think the
those
Borpas
videos
too,
were hilarious.
they made me laugh every time. I almost bought one just for like the videos, but like I think the problem too with some of these is like the writing in first person, second person. Like the Borpas, I feel like would make you feel like an audience member. Like oh my god, these are hilarious. But
Yes.
I don't know if you'd identify with them. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
You don't feel like you are the
Yeah, the
Borpa.
Milady is like
You're
a
viewing it.
psychotic mask you put on, and you're like, time to be crazy. Like, just and get on Twitter and just start a fight. Like, you know what I
And I
mean? Like
think that's
a
a
mosh
really
pit.
good point. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
people in profile pics have lost that, like, cause and you just go down one rabbit trail to the next, but
yeah,
it is really important that you can identify with what you're buying. If you're not like,
hmm,
that's me,
yeah,
and I guess there are people that do collect those NFTs, like people collect photography NFTs, people collect,
yeah.
one pieces. But for me, I I find it always easier to pull the trigger on. I'm like, that's mine. Like the true degen activity. Like when I was like looking through like the Shinsei Galver secondary, like I'm not just trying to buy a floor or a rare one. You're trying to find the
Hmm.
one that you're like, yeah, 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 that's my character.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's more of like identifying with the character when you're investing or you're buying for like the art, like you really enjoy it. Like that I think there's another thing like I don't think anybody's gotten rich for like flipping Miladies. You know what I mean? Like, unless they
Yeah,
just minted a ton and just like then sold them
Mhm.
on the secondary, but like nobody's like going through and degenning out like, ooh, this Milady with like 69 drip is gonna be like, somebody's PFP or something like, I'm gonna buy it for
exactly.
yeah, it's like it just doesn't happen. I think the Borpas kind of fell into the same way, but I always I love the Borpas. They're hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I would get I just appreciated that they were really taking time to look into the different the icons that make up an art piece, especially a
Hmm.
portrait, which a profile picture is a portrait. So like,
Yeah.
what can the eyes represent? What can the mouth represent? What what can the shoulders represent or the head itself? It doesn't have to just be like, oh, this one has a pipe, this one
Hmm.
is holding a slice of pizza. Like
It's
they
got
can,
a cigarette
all
or like,
they
yeah.
can have meaning. They can be
Hmm.
viewed with meaning.
Well, I feel
And
like the
and
people behind the Borpas actually knew art as well because they were going through like the historical art, like the Renaissance and like all these different ones that they like actually
yes,
knew art too. You know what I mean? Like,
it
Mhm.
I
definitely
don't know if
seemed
some
that
of these
way.
guys do. Yeah, like I
Yeah.
don't know if some of these other ones are like, you know, Warring Warthogs really knows like Renaissance art and like, these different ones. Like,
Yeah, and that's
you
what
know.
really attracted me to the Wasis was actually their traits and how there was
Hmm.
something just so fatalistic about it. And that's part of the whole thing where the Wasi only live
They
14
only live
days,
2 weeks.
yeah,
Yeah, or
but how they'll have like the they'll just have a sword going through their belly, or they'll
yeah.
have a crown on their head, but that's upside down, which
Hmm.
is like the whole is like almost like a blinded by power reference. Like I just feel like they really put a lot of attention and thought into the meaning behind those traits, and that makes the traits really interesting. And I think when you have something like that, it makes it tough to sell. And if you and you could do like the kaiju whatever thing, and I forget the actual kaiju project it was, where they if you are listed under this price, we're deleting you. I guess that's one way to raise a
Oh,
floor
there's
price, but people might not
yeah.
buy your new floor price. If you want to raise the floor price, you want traits and characters that people really want to have and that they really identify with those traits and that character, and that makes it tough to sell.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, I think well, that's what I was gonna say. I think some people misidentify like that, supply and demand. Everybody goes for the supply side, and they're like, "Oh, great, we'll just make there like be one or like 10 or whatever."
yeah,
But it works both ways. Like if you have a ton of demand, you can raise supply. Like it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like, but
you
Mhm.
need
everybody
to
goes like,
really. Yeah.
exactly, but everybody's like, "Oh, I'd rather make, you know, 5 instead of making 10,000 because then even if there's a little demand, it's still worth more instead of trying to make the demand really the crux of the whole thing."
That's huge. That really is huge. Is no one's. It's very. I'm not saying no one, but it's very important to think about how are we going to make people want these things. And I think,
Yeah.
and that's the one reason I didn't end up, working on that one project. Just not because my artistic sensibilities were offended when they were like, people are doing stick figures, but I was just like, these guys, I don't know if they're really quite getting it. I don't know
Yeah.
if they're quite respecting the MFers enough to understand that it's not just a stick figure, and I
Mhm.
don't think that they're really considering how important it is that people actually need to see this thing on their phone or on their desktop as a picture and
Yeah.
say, yeah, I'm going to spend hundreds of dollars on that. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and and when it comes to the utility, like, some of these projects, they might say, oh, well, it's Fiverr art, but we're going to have a great alpha channel. And it's like, well, are you? I mean, there's a lot of projects already out with great alpha channels. They don't need to buy
Mhm.
into your
Mhm.
alpha channel. Like, I
Yeah.
think that the chubby corns are kind of notorious for that. Um,
We
you know
swing
what
in
I
on
mean?
everybody here. I like it. No, I mean
Yeah.
totally.
No, no, I'm saying that
Gotta
the
change
chubby
the
corns
milady
have a
profile
great
picture.
alpha channel. So
Oh,
like
I thought
you're
you were
gonna
saying
beat
there was like
that.
a shitty alpha channel. They're like, these guys are
No,
notorious for
no.
having a shitty one. I was
I
like,
No.
oh,
think
okay, good.
Jeebus.
Which
I
I'm
think
fine
he's
with,
on there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
he's
think
an
Jeebus
OG,
is on
like
there.
crypto OG, I think. I don't know if he's like an Ethereum, not Ethereum. Is he an Ethereum founder? Something like that. He's like, I think really, really old. But
Oh yeah, I didn't know that. I just knew he was like fire. The post for fire, and
yeah,
then I
he's like, I
followed
think
him
he's been
when he.
around for a long time.
got deleted.
Well,
It seems like that's kind of like a rite of passage is having your account deleted.
I know, because I think people were saying like, what the like they banned Jeebus. Like he's literally, it was something for like fake news or something stupid. It was like he's literally like an OG Ethereum. I think they were trying to ban a bunch of people for it. When the MetaMask, whole
Oh,
what's his face? Shoot. The guy, I mean, not to get too spicy in the pod, but like the guy came out as like actually Catholic and was like, no, they don't think this is cool. And they were like, good, burn him at
oh,
the
I
stake.
remember that whole
You
thing.
remember that,
Yeah,
right? Brantley or something like that,
Brantley.
or
Yeah,
yeah,
the
some. I'm not
dot
into
ETH,
that. So
the
yeah,
dot
the dot
ETH.
ETH guys are like, fuck that guy. Like
Yeah,
decentralized, fuck that guy. It's like,
yeah, the
so
the
we're like,
dot ETH
okay.
community definitely, and I'm sure there's overlap, but there's definitely a little bit more of normal Twitter mixed in.
Yeah, but like then they banned Jeebus too or something. It was like what the
Yeah.
he was like, I don't know what he was like, collateral damage or something, I think. But that was a pretty wild time. I think somebody needs to do like a history of crypto Twitter and all the dramas and stuff like that. It's
Just like a
like,
timeline.
Oh, that
yeah,
would be great.
probably Inverse Bra or whatever has to do that because he's the only one like with multiple personalities, enough personalities or interns to pull it off. You know.
Just a
Exactly.
Twitter timeline with like all of the significant like Twitter events that have happened and all of the significant like canceling and deleting, and yeah, that'd be great.
There's so
Well, I
many
learned so
too.
much just from Zach's. Zach,
Yeah,
Oh
Zach's
yeah,
was
Zachs are
great.
hilarious.
he had that mega thread, and so when I first got, because again, I was coming in completely like had no idea what was going on, but like
Yeah.
by reading through that one mega thread he has pinned, I learned a lot to look out for.
Yep.
For sure.
No,
I mean,
that's
it's
I
crazy.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like that's why I like this conversation so much. Just from the it's crazy the amount of thought that you as an artist put into, and I imagine it's the same for a lot of artists that are like actually very involved in the space or working on projects, et cetera, et cetera. It's cool getting that perspective from you guys because I feel like you bring like this completely other layer to evaluating an NFT project. Obviously it's like art centric, but like you also have a lot of opinions that are outside of the art too, and which I think is important. But like it's cool getting this like lens because I feel like at some point when this market starts to mature, I think most people are going to be tacking on that lens from an artistic standpoint as well. Obviously, like there's value to utility, there's value to community, there's a lot of value to team, but I think like one piece of value that's kind of lagging compared to the others is like the art and the thought behind the art. And it's cool getting an artist perspective because I feel like you guys are already there and we're just not there yet.
Well, it's interesting because I think the main goal, and I when I really started to learn to think this way, it was through music,
Mm-hmm.
and just like learning how to write songs and the Velvet Underground and the Stones, and the Beatles, and all these different aesthetics and these different
Mm-hmm.
ways you can place a hook here or you can go into a bridge here, but different ways to frame these songs that then you're delivering, and you've put a lot of time into it, but you're not looking really for the person at the other end to understand all the time you put into it and all the thought.
Mm-hmm.
You're just, it's that whole, and with music, it's just like I like this song, or with NFTs it's the classic, like we like the art.
Mm-hmm.
How it takes a lot of thought, I think, in the art that you're putting out to put it out and just have someone on the other side saying, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They might
I think
not never connect a XYZ reason for why. We don't need them to know why they like it, but
yeah.
the time needs to be put in to get them to that place where immediately they see it and they're like, I'll have that.
Right. I agree. And I think the only layer to add to that is like there's also this layer of like it when you get an investment layer to everything because it's like
Mm-hmm.
now you have people that aren't like, oh, I like this art, so I'm going to buy it. It's like value's going up, everyone else is getting into it. So I mean, it's a piece of that is FOMO,
Yes.
and I think a piece of that is like just trying to make money. And so I think like because of that, there is a lack of like, oh, this makes me feel good. Like I like the way this looks. Like I want this to be my PFP. And then there that almost gets substituted with like everyone else is getting into this, so I'm going to get into it.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, there's no way the Beatles would have ever gotten so big either, probably without FOMO.
True. Yeah,
They
exactly.
started
Yeah, I
to
mean,
tour.
Yeah.
it does play its role still, like in everything in the real world, like all art and everything. It's like, once your friends get into something, it becomes that much easier for you to get into it too. There's that piece of
Exactly.
FOMO that pushes you into it.
you don't want to be the first and you don't want to be the last in anything, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But I
It's
think there's
tough.
definitely going to be communities for like each section, like there's going to
Hmm.
be the degens that are just trying to flip. There's going to be guys that are looking at fidenzas, and just going, yep, that's 1,000 ETH right there. Like there's going to be all these different
Bless
like
those guys.
subcultures. Yeah. Those guys are going to be bag holders. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean, yeah, it could be worth it. Could be 1,000 ETH. Who am I to say? But I think it's just gonna like it's gonna be more like tribal. There's gonna be like smaller groups, and then there's gonna be these like miladies that are just like swinging on everybody.
Exactly. And to me, just prop maybe because of just like my background and my personality, I've always been really drawn to the more punk rock projects and the projects
Yeah.
that have more energy and more flagrancy, because I think it really matches the best with what's going on right now in Web3 and this whole new market, this whole new NFT market that's still maturing. Where,
Hmm.
3 years ago, if somebody thought that this Jack tweet is worth 3 million, it's not. It's not. You have lost your money. You will not get it back, sir. You know.
Yeah, exactly. But
But so in the future, 20 years from now, what are people, because if you're investing this money in it and you're not selling it, you think it's going to be worth money later.
hmm
What So I think the projects that are going to end up having the most value are projects, like like Ragnarok, where it's like there's a
Hmm.
ton of energy, they're making things happen, they're doing a game, they're getting people in the metaverse, the profile pictures look fire, you know what I mean?
hmm
Or
Hmm.
like Wassies, where it's like this is an OG crypto Twitter meme, they're everywhere. And there's like 40 different artists making great Wassies every day, and that was part of the time. Because like we look at it, like for instance, everyone thinks of Andy Warhol now, and they'll like look at the Campbell soup cans or whatever, and they're
hmm
like, oh, so it's gonna look retro to us because that's an old design on that can.
Hmm.
And we saw those paintings probably the first time when we were like 9 in school, but when they
Yeah.
came out in 1961, it might as well have just been like a perfectly drawn picture of like a Tide Pods.
Yeah.
Like,
Just like taking Tide Pods or like a Starbucks cup or something and just
yeah,
like
it
four of
was
them and
way more memey
yeah.
than people realize because it has
Hmm.
this sheen on it. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of the art in the 60s that's acquired value and kept that value is it's timeless. It's not just a product of when it was. Like
Hmm.
it's
Mm.
beyond just like Age of Aquarius or something that's like overtly 60s. It's always going to look a little
Yeah.
cheesy, right? But the stuff that really speaks to what was happening in the 60s,
Hmm.
like Sergeant Pepper's, that's always
Yeah.
going to be huge.
Yeah, because it
Like
feels like
Andy
a time
Warhol,
machine too.
exactly. And so
Yeah.
with the projects I like to get involved in Web3 with, it's what are the ones that I think really line up with what we're doing here, because Web3 is punk rock and everybody hates it,
Hmm.
and I feel like there's a place for cutesy for sure, like, but I feel like the Watsies do a good job actually of having a little bit of cuteness, but you can tell there's something off.
Hmm.
They're a little bit weird. Well, I mean, that's what I'm curious. Like, how do we bring more artists in? How do we like, because I know like cute PFPs will definitely draw a certain demographic. Like,
Yes.
like the beans, like people were like bagging on the beans a lot. And I think people don't understand the Asian market, like that Azuki kind of lives in a little bit more, is that
Mm-hmm.
like Hello Kitty is a massive market. Like Hello Kitty is
Hmm.
a big brand. Like, it's like Disney. Like people don't realize, they're like, oh, that kind of looks like a little bit funny or whatever. It's like, okay, you need to realize we're a global kind of industry now. But I
Yes.
wonder how we bring in new artists and get them to really get past like the bias, that they've been indoctrinated
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of education. And
into.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I remember someone had like, I don't get into the Twitter wars, but there was some artists who they were they had always just done art, and they're probably whatever doing $200 commissions. Then all of a sudden they said, I'm doing my first NFT. It was some alien. A million people are just hating on him and like
Yeah.
unfollowed and like you're ruining the environment. And someone wrote, and then there was people just battling back and forth, but someone just wrote this longer thread, and they were like, Bitcoin takes 0.5% of the world's energy. It's true, but people don't understand how much of the world's energy the internet takes up. Over like 16% of the world's
Yeah.
energy is the internet. So, yes, it takes up energy, but if you mint the NFT in Solana, that's like posting 2 tweets. Are you on Instagram? It really is just a JPEG. It's the same amount of energy. So I feel like when people get educated and they start to realize what's going on, then eventually you're gonna have that watershed moment where it's easier to be in it than out of it. And I think right
Yeah.
now we're just we're in kind of like an odd place where not only are so many people out of it, but I think that there's, like you talked about FOMO, but there's almost just like that feeling of like they missed out on it. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they want
for
to
sure.
hate it.
What do you
I
think?
think
So
we all go
I
through
guess
that.
on that note, this is probably a good one to kind of start closing out on too. Like, what do you think Web3 does for art that Web2 doesn't, that traditional or like just traditional art space doesn't do? And what do you think is the selling point in Web3 to someone who's kind of on the fence, an artist that's on the fence between, kind of just sticking to their $200 commissions and working their way into the NFT space?
Oh, for sure. So the thing about Web 2 is there's a couple massive corporations that own everything, and you get to have the pleasure of using their service for free in exchange for them being able to just share you as they wish,
Right.
which can lead to, you getting more visibility, less visibility. You got to start working the algorithm. You basically need to be a marketer in order to work some of
Yeah.
these algorithms. Um,
You're a marketer, not an artist. I mean,
yeah,
I think too people don't understand like that tradfi art, like traditional art. Basically, there's artists like there's art experts that say like why is a Pollock worth so much or why is a whatever worth. It's basically a bunch of people that are like art historians or art degree people saying yeah that's worth a lot. Like there's cultural significance to it.
yeah,
And I think they're learning about art in NFTs and like why is that Wasi worth $1,500 or why is it worth why is that Fidenza worth 1,000 ETH? Like that's a scam. I was like, welcome to art. Like it's not
yeah. Well,
like
there's
it's
that. I
what you
mean,
pay
yeah, like
for it,
the
right? Like
CIA was paying for Rothko or whatever. That was in the Daily
yeah,
Beast.
exactly. It's like they're like, oh, it's just for money laundering. It's like there's always going to be a dark side to every good thing.
Yeah, like
You know what I
did
mean?
did you
Like
guys not see Beverly Hills Cop? Like, come
yeah,
on,
Jesus, nobody's seen Beverly Hills Cop around here. These kids are
it's a
too young for the
classic.
internet.
We got to bring it to the kids.
I
But
know. We gotta do the
I
education.
but like let's say you're an artist and you like I noticed a lot of artists, and when I was trying to get in the streetwear, you're posting on Instagram, but then like people are getting all their satisfaction just by seeing it and then scrolling past it. And so then if someone wants an actual image, you have to do like this custom one-off commission, and they're gonna want to pay you like
Mm-hmm.
$100. Like they're gonna want to pay you like basically minimum wage to do it if you're really taking your time to do it.
Probably even less.
And
Yeah.
and the difference with Web3 is that, it is a little juice. There is a little money in it. There's a lot of people who
Mm-hmm.
bought ETH super cheap. And so it's trading at 2,800, but it doesn't really feel that way for them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that has trickled down a little bit. And so now you have this place where if someone really likes a piece of art, they actually want to pay for it. And I
Yeah.
think it's not so much about, necessarily just the JPEG, but just like having that proof of ownership, which also can in many projects be linked in with access. I think is where it's going. It's
No.
beyond art. There's an element of club to it.
Mhm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
and that's why NFTs I think really are. It is the new social media.
And I like,
That is it. Yeah.
yeah. And I like that. I like that idea that like you guys are talking about too, with like, art criticism and like who's assigning value to like this, like Web3 kind of excludes that piece. Like it almost strips it out from like the layer of like from the artist to the user, from the artist to like the audience, because rather than like someone coming, a museum or whoever and saying like, okay, this piece is worth this much, like we're going to put this up on our wall. It's almost like it goes straight to the people that want to buy it, and it lets them assign value to it rather than like there needed to be this intermediary, right? Like this,
Exactly. No
like this.
gatekeepers.
Yeah, exactly. There's no gatekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
There's not this like subjective removal of value. It's just like the value is assigned by the people who like it, the people who want to buy it, the people who want to own it, rather than there being like someone in the middle saying like this is worth more than this piece. And then me on the other end being like, okay, well, if that's worth more than that piece, then I want that piece, even though the other piece makes me feel you know an
Yeah.
emotion or something that's much more raw,
Hmm.
or like makes me feel more attached to it. It's like I'm going to buy this just because someone said it has more value.
Yeah, it's more pure, I really think. Like, I mean, I
Yeah,
think too in Web3, like you can actually make a good living as an artist versus because there's no gatekeeping. Like, if you want to be an artist in Web3, you put out content, you put out work, you put out your art, you keep doing it. And you have unlimited communication channels to your who people who are gonna buy it.
right.
In the art world, it's like you have to go through galleries and you have to do showings and you have to, like it's all this like who kind of stuff too if you're
Hmm.
gonna be big. So
Oh,
Yeah,
for
no.
sure. And it basically becomes almost impossible. And then I
yeah.
think, and so and Juan Cornelio, I think I'm saying his name right, Juan Cornelia. He has these wild cartoons, very not safe for work, disgusting grotesque cartoons, but they're hilarious. I think so anyway. And he just
Hmm.
launched his first project, and I was happy to see it. Like I didn't buy one, um, just because they were like a little high for me at the time when they
Hmm.
came out. But at the same time, I was really happy to see that because that's definitely sticking your neck out at this point.
Hmm.
But only a few more people need to do that before people start taking it seriously and start realizing that this is a perfectly viable way to sell art, that
Hmm.
artists are
Yeah.
making more money. And especially when we're talking about going from the person who has a job, who
Hmm.
wants to be an artist, to being a full-time artist. I don't know if that can really happen in Web 2.
Hmm.
It's
I
but
really
impossible.
don't
Like
know
if
if
you
it
want to be a
can.
sculptor or something like that, like you're a sculptor and you want to now do sculpting full time as an artist, like it's almost impossible. Like I don't know
Yeah,
how many sculptors actually do that. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
because if you're selling your art, trying to sell your art on Instagram or Facebook and Web 2, you're not only competing with other people who are trying to sell your art, you're competing with all the art that's ever existed because there are so many
Hmm.
art accounts that are just compiling great sci-fi art or compiling like these amazing images or stills for movie scenes. You're competing with all these visuals from the past, from the future that are all free, and you're the
Hmm.
person saying, "This is the thing I just made. Can you pay me?" Versus NFTs,
Yeah.
Yep.
it's a whole separate world where it's like we want stuff that's new, that hasn't been done before. We want to see your new art. What do you have to say? And so that's why I
Yeah.
think the Web3 world, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of artists gravitate towards it, and there will be that watershed moment where it's no longer verboten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too,
Exactly.
like that might be the stepping stone a lot of people need to get into NFTs, right? Because if the artists endorse the space, then like what's stopping people from saying like, okay, like if the people who are making these things endorse the space and the bulk of them endorse the space, then like maybe it's actually okay if I work my way into NFTs and like I actually do want to, start investing in NFTs. If like the artists, the people who are the originators of what I'm buying, the thing that's being created, the person that's creating it is saying like, yeah, this is a safe space, like this is where I want to be, then like maybe that's what people need to get into the space too.
Well, I
For
think that
sure.
too. Yeah, there's gonna be like people that like basically it's gonna become uncool not to be on Web3. Like essentially
For
like
sure.
everyone's gonna have their guy or gal that they like when they get into Web3, it's gonna be like, oh, okay, now it's okay for me to like it, whether it's like a streamer, video
Right.
gamer, artist,
It's like a
whatever it
shift in
is.
social acceptance. I mean, that's kind of why we
Yeah,
that's kind of why we like Bubble World so much, right? It's like
exactly.
this idea that you're bringing all of these influencers into Web3. You're creating this bridge from Web2 to Web3. I think that's going to be a huge launch pad, so to speak, not just for the projects, but actually just a launch pad for people getting into the space.
Yeah, the cultural
Exactly, to make
tide
it
will
safe.
turn.
Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. It's like really people don't want to like put in their account, like you were saying, like they post something online, they're an artist and they post something in Web3 or whatever, and everyone's like, "Fuck you, can go die," like all this like really bad, vile stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's like that jump is pretty bad. But if you then have like big accounts or big people that they like are kind of too big for to criticize, like where the fan base is just too into them or whatever, they just don't care.
Yes.
It'll start to switch. Yeah.
And yes, I agree. And I think part of the problem that we've had onboarding a lot of people to Web3 is that unfortunately a lot of these Web2 influencers, their interactions with Web3 are rugs. So like
Yeah,
you'll
for
have
sure.
like, I'm launching
Mayweather.
my coin, and then like the second the rapper launches the coin, he sells all of it.
You're telling
Or
me
you
Kim
had
Kardashian's coin is a rug? I need to go sell something here
Ethereum
real quick.
Max, or
Yeah.
wasn't she pushing Ethereum Max? Like that's
Her
BitConnect
and
level.
Mayweather, they're getting sued for that shit too, which is good.
Jesus.
I
Yeah.
and you know what? And people say that they don't want regulation. We do, but it's kind of like can you just regulate what sucks? Like
Yeah.
with Twitter, it's like, can you get rid of do I need to get followed by 40 Elon Musks every day? Can you fix the bots and not worry about Jeebus?
Yeah.
No,
Like
I
fix
that's
know.
what
hilarious.
sucks. Get rid of the I would love to see you dragging off these rugs and scams and chains.
100%.
Yeah, for
We need
sure.
the
I mean,
the
I
space
think
needs to become more
but
raw.
when that
Yeah,
happens, I think we know that it's like mainstream. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's like when your favorite punk
exactly.
band is playing, Madison Square Garden. You're like, oh, okay. It's
They're
not
not
like,
you just yours
yeah,
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. And you're like, oh, okay, fuck. I can't get rugged every other day. Like it's safe, it's
Oh,
sanitized. Like,
we'll talk about the good old days.
yeah, exactly. And you're like, I remember when every other project was a rug and you had to like be in Discord grinding for a whitelist and not,
Exactly.
God, I
Exactly.
miss those days.
Well, anyways, man, like I feel like us three could talk about could talk about this forever.
For
So
sure.
maybe
For
maybe we
sure.
have to do a part 2 with you too. But
Oh yeah.
first of all, like just want to say thank you for hopping on, especially for, one milestone, episode 10, and two, second milestone, our first artist spotlight, man. Like it's great having you. And like I think that what I've learned from this podcast is like there's a completely another layer to NFTs that a lot of people aren't thinking about. And I think bringing artists on is going to be really important for helping people understand that layer, and like helping people get familiar with another layer of perspective, another layer of value that a lot of people aren't thinking about, and hopefully like a lot more empathy for the artist, which, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, is kind of our mission for this episode.
Excellent. Well, I had a great time talking with you all. Yeah, be happy to do it again.
And
So,
and us too, man. Like again, thank you, and like keep doing what you're doing. Like we really like Ragnarok. We think that it's going places. It's a really cool project. We love play to earn games. And the PFPs are awesome, and so are the in-game characters. So keep doing what you're doing, man.
sounds
Yeah,
good.
thanks,
Hey,
man.
take it easy.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye, guys.